Climate change. Political. There is mostly scientific consensus on the reality and severity of climate change, but that does not equal political action. Political countries vary in their responses to climate change. Small island nations are aware of dangerous their existence, where some nations, U.S. especially, have entire climate change denial movements. We see historical data such as tree rings, ice levels from Greenland, or ice caps, both affecting our understanding of modern global warming and its severity. Economic companies and people do not want to change their behaviors to avoid additional climate change. They are comparing the short term of changing their behaviors with the harder to understand or know, learn their problems, which may be a lot of words but are harder to understand. This is similar to how being focused on the short term instead of long term in our lives. As global temperature rises, ice caps will melt and rising sea levels worldwide. This is really scary because people on Earth live near the coast, especially in the developing world. India is a good example of this and will displace refugees if the sea levels rise dramatically. Why is it urgent? The biggest problem in terms of climate change is the emission of tens of thousands of tons per day. We're accelerating global warming that will rise Earth temperature, change precipitation, more than huge hurricanes, reduce ice levels, rise the sea level, and increase the acidity of ocean.
Some of the things that are being done about climate change are getting rid of fossil fuels. They're using a lot more electricity and things such as cars, and factories are now starting to not release anything and run on electricity. Also, energy is becoming renewable. Instead of burning coal and using things that are not renewable to make energy, we are using solar energy, which comes from the light of the sun, hydroelectric energy, which comes from water, and wind energy. So in terms of what should be done in the future, I think a lot of countries are already striving to get that. They just need to continue what they're already starting to do. So the things that should be done are zero emissions. And they're doing this by carbon credits. Each country has a certain amount of credits of carbon dioxide that they can release, and they're slowly going to cut this down till we reach zero. Also, 100% renewable energy. All of the future energy we want to be from either solar power, wind power, or hydroelectric power. All these powers are renewable. All this energy is renewable, so it will not run out or emit anything, because if you burn coal to get electricity, you emit carbon dioxide. The other things are in terms of deforestation. We should definitely stop deforestation and use more technology instead of paper. So then, to reverse the effect of deforestation has already had on us is plant trees. So to build up from what we have lost, we need to plant a lot more trees. This will also help in taking the carbon dioxide that is released from animals and ourselves into oxygen.
Economic, and human rights problem. Countries lack government funding for welfare and small business initiatives. It is an economic problem because poverty involves lack of income. People in poverty lack basic human rights like food, water, shelter, and education. Some factors that cause poverty are overpopulation, lack of education, inadequate employment, hunger, homelessness, disease, and high costs of living. Poverty is one of the biggest problems facing society today. Poverty is a barrier that prevents education, health, and safe communities. Over 80% of people in the world live on less than $10 a day, and in Africa, almost 50% of the population live below the extreme poverty line, which is $1.25 a day. 22,000 children die each day due to poverty. People living in poverty do not have access to basic necessities like food, water, and shelter. Poverty is a cycle. When parents are very poor, children will be hungry, sick, and unable to go to school. Without education, they can't get a good job, and then their family will also live in poverty. People live in poverty all over the world. In Canada, 1 in 6 children live in poverty. While they may not be in extreme poverty, they are in relative poverty because of the higher cost of living.
Some of the things that are being done that's just been starting up is microfinancing organizations, in which people receive small loans with no interest, and so they can get these loans from microfinancing organizations or world banks. Another thing that you can do is donate to charity, but this thing kind of helps organizations. Some of the things that should be done are microfinancing. I think that should continue, and hopefully it'll become bigger, and people can receive loans so they can buy tools that help them produce goods or services. And people can receive loans so they can buy tools that help them produce goods or services. Another thing that we should do is create job opportunities any way you can. If they're in a safe job that gives them money, they will probably be out of the poverty line. Another thing is charity. We went over this. I think more people should donate to charity to help these people kind of get on their feet. Also, education. I think with a good education, if we can educate these people, they can start getting good jobs so they can.
The need to solve this problem is great. The lack of some of the most basic medicine that we take for granted is keeping the average lifespan of South Africa and Afghanistan to 50. They need to care so badly that some walk 45 kilometers to get the medicine they need. Economic communities, individuals don't have enough money to pay for healthcare, which limits their opportunities. The programs in the United States to pay doctors 30 to 40% extra for working in unserved areas, but this did not help the parts of the world that was extremely undeveloped. Also, faculties like hospitals and universities are not in poor areas, which increases the inequality. Poor countries have sometimes been exploited by the other countries. This took away their wealth through the people and the resources, and so these countries did now lack money. According to the recent reports, 11 million children died because of the lack of basic healthcare, food, and clean water. One of the organizations that has some of the success is making an impact is Intercare. Statistics. Every year, 25 million children do not get immunized, even though that is an easy way to stop the problem at the start. 881 million die of malaria per year, 91% in Africa. In order to stop most of the diseases, you must stop them before you can start by amusing your children. The problem is the people in the villages will keep postponing to go there because of the long walk, and there is not as much incentive. We must do in order to stop this is going to the Brazilian government has done. We must first have the clinics to close the village and have the incentive for them. You will also do this for the diseases by allowing them to have the easiest access.
So, some things that are being done to give more people access to medical support is an organization is taking donations of returned and unused drugs, basic returned and unused drugs, and they give them to their clinics in Africa, and these basic drugs that we take for granted are saving lives in their clinics. And so another thing is starting to be done is more people are getting immunized. This stops the really deadly diseases before they start, so they have less of a chance of coming to this clinic for necessities in terms of medical support. Another thing that is being done, they're building more clinics. They're starting to build more clinics, but hopefully in the future there should be clinics everywhere, so some people don't have to walk 50 kilometers just to get to a clinic. They could walk a couple miles at the most. Another thing is distributing cheap objects to stop diseases. For example, mosquito nets to stop malaria and dengue, and objects such as this. So we talked about what is being done. Now we should talk about what should be done. What should be done is a lot more people should get immunized. To do this, you have to give incentive for the people to come and get immunized. For example, if you give someone a bag of rice after they got immunized, they would not only benefit from the actual immunization, stopping future diseases, but they would also gain a bag of rice, which is food. Another thing that should be done is access. People should have more access to the medical care they need and the drugs for immunization. So they don't have to walk very far to get that stuff. Another thing, donations. In terms of unused medicine, I think it's a great way to give the people that need it basic medicine that saves lives. And finally, giving people objects that could help prevent diseases, like mosquito nets. And I think with these things, we could make a huge step in stopping um, people having no access to medical support.
Leading cause of health problems and death in countries around the world. 3.4 million people die every year because of water-related diseases. Almost 1 billion people worldwide do not have access to safe water, and this number is expected to triple by 2025. The world has enough water for everyone, but funding and water efficiency have prevented access for the entire population. In many countries, girls spend hours every day walking to get water for their families and can't go to school. Without access to water, communities cannot grow. Businesses and development depend on these basic infrastructure issues. No one will come and start a new business or factory if there is no drinking water available. Access to clean water is the first step to improving education, world hunger, and poverty.
Access to clean water has historically allowed for many cities close to the coast to flourish economically and socially, unlike other inland countries like Congo. For example, the current difference between Congo and a city like New York is the global domestic product, which is $348 for Congo and $47,423 for New York. This is just one example of how inland countries with limited access to water are a lot more poor compared to the coastal cities like New York. Access to clean water is mildly possible due to certain wells that have been built. However, these wells are incredibly far apart, and thus many have to walk several kilometers just to get water to their own family. Kids that have to do this usually don't have time for school as a result. The economical state of most countries without the access to clean water has given the side effect of not being able to afford building wells. It is very urgent to give countries or states the access to clean water, as tainted water is currently one of the leading causes of death in the world, stacking up a horrific 3.41 million per year. Communities of a state or country cannot hope to grow because of their fragile economical state and because too many die from the tainted water supplies. What is currently being done about the issue of countries or states not being able to have access to clean water is that generous donations from private people and organizations help the country build more wells, filters for the tainted water, and medication for those who got sick from the tainted water. Citizens should also be aware of what a tainted water does. For example, they should be taught about sanitation and conservation of water, and more wells need to be built closer to communities or in them as well.
And economic problems cause lack of education in developing countries. A main problem that causes people to go uneducated is their distance away from the nearest school. In many countries, schools are few and far between, making it too hard to travel and attend. Other children who don't go to school are from poor families who can't afford uniforms, school fees, or the children have to stay home and earn money for their family. Disease and illness also cause people to go uneducated. In North America, many schools are underfunded and lack supplies. Nutrition is a problem in nearly every country in the world. Girls and poor children are often the ones who don't go to school. Of the 67 million primary-age children not in school, 53% are girls. Going to school keeps children healthier and safe. Uneducated adults have a harder time finding jobs, and their families are more likely to become homeless, uneducated, and hungry. When children go to school, they learn basic skills that help them and their families break the cycle of poverty. Children who are not educated about basic health are more likely to become sick because they don't know about nutrition and hygiene.
According to the No Child Left Behind law, everyone should be equally educated. If this can't be followed, it will result in severe sanction. This was the case with Miami Edison High School, where the student body was mainly black, had high dropout rates, and violent fights broke out on a regular basis.
Multiple organizations have taken up arms against unequal education towards a specific race, gender, or any of the sort. Some political arguments about education cannot end in consensus, as some care more about their own national security and thus cannot spend the resources necessary to stop unequal education, whilst the other parties are pro-education.